in your back pocket. And I've had this, the idea to talk about this in my back pocket, as it were, since we started. We are recording, yeah, we're all good. So we start with the whole idea of, what's in a name? Names are interesting things when you think about it. So, for example, if I said the name Gracie, I think in the room like this, we'd all kind of twig what the association with that is. It's Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, so it's kind of the family. Not that the word Gracie means Jiu-Jitsu literally, but the association is there. Then, of course, you've got nicknames. I think my greatest claim to fame in the Jiu-Jitsu world is to have given Callan Potter his fight name, the Rockstar, because he was in a cover band and he was still actively involved in that when the gym opened, and he'd wander around the mat singing. So I called him Rockstar one day and it stuck. I'm really stoked for that. And of course, our first anniversary, we got these t-shirts. And it says Suspect Renegade. There's a long story behind that, but on the back. Oh, sorry. Ginger Ninja. You see that? So that's my nickname for obvious reasons. I've been doing martial arts since I was 16 and what hair I have left is ginger. Then of course, the names that we have often mean things in other languages. So Michael, I haven't been Michael since I was 12, as far as I'm concerned, but means one who's like God, which could be any further from the truth, but that's kind of beside the point. But that's what my name literally means. So when I knew we were having a boy, I thought very deliberately about what a good name would be. And I know it's trendy for Christians to pick biblical names for their kids. And initially I wanted Joshua, but that was taken by a cousin of his. And then when I hit upon Jacob, so many things fell out in my thinking about how important that was. And in a real sense that it's a prayer for him. And he sat here today. It's not an embarrassing day for you simply because I'm talking about your name, so chill, dude. It is kind of important to think about the biblical characters in a couple of ways. And the first is to remember that Jacob sits in a line that is a solution to a problem. Now, the Bible, it talks about the issue of evil, but it does so in a very roundabout way very often, I think. The stories of fruit and naked people and snakes and all sorts of stuff like that. And theologians will fill in a lot of the gaps on what all that means. But one of my favourite writers, Tom Wright, says the Bible has a little bit to say about the origins of evil and suffering, has a lot more to say about what God's doing about it. And what God's doing about it starts with a family. So you get 10, 11 chapters in the start of Genesis about how miserable things have become. And then you get a genealogy. And so you get this line of Abraham, Isaac, and then Jacob. And so Jacob sits in that tradition of what God is doing in the world about the way things have been stuffed up. And the other interesting thing is ultimately that Jacob gets a new name in the story that I'm going to read to you a bit later on, Israel. And even when Jesus refers to Jacob, it's always Jacob in the sense of the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So it's an important name. The other thing is when I thought about giving him the name, is the recognition that, the old Sunday school approach to the Old Testament. You find these stories and you think, oh, here's a good moral example. David was a man of God and Solomon was very wise, but they're all really ratbags in the end. And I think we fall over if we mind the Old Testament for good moral examples. They're people who God was doing work with. But there's one incident in the life of Jacob that I find fascinating, and it kind of where he gets his name from. It's kind of interesting in a way. I said that, in the Old Testament it's Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, but Jacob wasn't the firstborn. It's his whole early life is a hairy tale of cheating. And I say hairy tale because Jacob was a non-identical twin. And his elder brother was this hairy guy called Esau, was red hair and very hairy. And because Jacob was the second born, that means he missed out. So in the ancient world and many other parts of history, the firstborn son inherited everything, and everyone else in the family was reliant upon him. The daughters for his protection, the brothers for a household for them to dwell in. But the name that was important historically and kind of passing along the line would have been Esau's. Esau wasn't a very bright fellow from what I can gather from the story, and held on to his inheritance very lightly, but Jacob cheated him out of it, which is not why I named my son. I don't want him to be a cheat, but we all do that from time to time. And it's this really funny story of Jacob being mummy's boy and Esau being dad's boy, and dad is dying and he's feeble and short-sighted and doesn't really know what's going on. And between Jacob and his mum, they fool Isaac into giving Jacob the blessing. And that's kind of like the ancient world's equivalent of the will. I give you the blessing, you inherit everything, you're in charge now. And then he snuffs it. And Esau rocks up, and the ancient culture being what it was, I'm going to kill you. You've cheated me out of everything that was mine, you're done for. And so Jacob does what any good cheat does when he's caught out, he runs away. To repeat myself, that's not my wish for my son, that he be a cheat who runs away, but it's a recognition that we stuff up in life. And if you think about what's going on in the narrative, this is the blessing from his dad to give him the inheritance, and the inheritance would involve, land to graze and livestock and the tents and all the worldly goods and possessions. In other words, the ancient world's equivalent of the good life. Now, we all want the good life, don't we? We all want the house, the car, the spouse, the kids, the possessions, whatever it is that, lights your candle, as it were. We've all got different visions of what the good life is about. What are we prepared to do to get it? Are we prepared to steal, to cheat, to walk over people? I mean, we're in a jiu-jitsu community, and we know people who succeeded in competition and the world champions, all that sort of thing, or people who've made the MMA world successfully. What have they done along the way? And some of us know some people who've, perhaps not always treated others in their sport so well, and others who have. So it's that issue of what are we willing to do to get the blessings that we want in life. The thing about Jacob's running away is he not only left the blessing that he'd so eagerly grasped after, but he left the context in which he was meant to have that, which was his family, his sense of community, and the idea that his God was with them, the God of his father and his forefather, and so on and so forth. So grasping after what he wanted, and then getting it, and then finding it wasn't what he wanted it to be, and having to run away from all of that, he ends up with nothing. And how often does that happen in life? Well, we could be here all day if we track the life and the career of Jacob. He goes through various adventures. The cheater gets cheated in the issue of love and marriage. And he cheats again and steals off his uncle, and all sorts of things happen. In the end, he comes to his senses, in a sense, and decides it's time to man up, as it were, and go home and face the music and face his brother. So he's really, to use an expression, packing himself over this. He thinks his brother's still got a grudge against him, he's going to kill him, and he's preparing himself mentally, as it were, to face up to things. He's built a life for himself now. He has a couple of wives, as they did in the ancient world, and children. And so he prays to God. How often do we reach out to God? Only in the times of trouble. And that's kind of a sense of the story. And God answers him in spades. And I'm going to read you the story. So he sends his family ahead, kind of to soften the blow of greeting his brother Esau. And the passage reads, "Then Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until daybreak." So you can see as a black belt why it is I choose the name Jacob, because he's wrestling with somebody. "When he saw that he had not prevailed against him, he touched the socket of his thigh." So he had an ITB injury, quite clearly, like I do. "So the socket of Jacob's thigh was dislocated while he wrestled with him. Then he said, 'Let me go, for the dawn is breaking.' But he said, 'I will not let you go unless you bless me.' So he said to him, 'What is your name?' And he said, 'Jacob.' He said, 'Your name shall no longer be Jacob, but Israel, for you have striven with God and with men and have prevailed.' Then Jacob asked him and said, 'Please tell me your name.' But he said, 'Why is it that you ask my name?' And he blessed him there. So Jacob named the place Peniel, for he said, 'I have seen God face to face, yet my life has been preserved.' Now the sun rose up upon him just as he crossed over Penuel, and he was limping on his thigh. Therefore to this day the sons of Israel do not eat the sinew of the hip, which is on the socket of the thigh, because he touched the socket of Jacob's thigh in the sinew of the hip." Lots of things to pull apart, but I just want to pick the eyes out of it really quickly. Firstly, for the biblical Jacob, what did it mean that he'd actually wrestled with God? Well, in the first place, it's an ancient account of a wrestling match, which shows you how old jiu-jitsu or its equivalents are. So we're in a fine tradition here. And that sense in that he wrestled with a human being, and yet he was wrestling with the living God. That God had been represented in the flesh, and that's an idea that Christians are obviously familiar with, right? The idea of Jesus. But the key in the passage that he wrestled with God for a blessing. The very thing he'd grasped after from his father and stolen and cheated, he now looks, if you like, for the real inheritance. Not something he cheats a human being out of, but something that he receives from God, and in the proper way. And in that sense, he's not looking anymore simply for wealth or fame or fortune or relationships, but the blessing of knowing God himself, and that all those other things would fall into place, as was understood in the ancient world, that you'd be blessed materially if you were blessed by God first. And in this case, he's doing things around the right way, not the wrong way. If you look at Jacob's life, he cheated and then he was cheated. He grasped for everything and then he ended up with nothing. So you might say, and people do say, that karma is a bitch, I won't say it on the recording. And yet the story turns around as nothing like karma at all. It's like what Bono says. The thing that keeps me on my knees is the difference between grace and karma. It's an interview well worth listening to where he talks about his understanding of the gospel, that you don't get what you deserve in this life. In God you get precisely what you don't deserve. And you see this in the story of Jacob. And so in a sense that's my prayer for my son Jake, that no matter how many times he screws up, that God will continue to be gracious to him and he'll continue to seek that. And in the passage it talks about him prevailing over God, and yet God wins the wrestling match. So clearly he didn't in the sense of winning, like me and Gustavo yesterday, didn't prevail over him. He didn't beat God in the wrestling match, but he strove with him. And so the blessing that he received was not something that he earned. Salvation is not by works, if we're going to jump into 16th century language of the Reformation. But it's the very idea that the Old Testament and the New Testament encourage us to engage with God. Being a Christian isn't a passive experience of, I'll walk down the street and I discover $50 and I'm blessed financially. Things don't always just fall in your lap. We're encouraged again and again and again to engage with God in an active sense. And the Jews got this better than I think Christians do. Read the book of Job. Read the Psalms, for example. The anguish that people go through, the tears, the anger, Job's accusations about, I've done nothing wrong. What the heck is going on here, God? Calling God into court, quite literally. God's bigger than our doubts. He's bigger than our fears, our concerns, our worries, our anger, our hatred, our anxiety. And I think thinking about the whole concept of grappling then is something that most of us in the room should understand. We know that wrestling, grappling involves sweat, tears, hard work, frustration, effort. I've driven home and been quite upset about how badly I've performed. And so what we have here is not a picture of the easy life. Christianity is not a promise that everything will go smoothly every day of the week. Christianity is a promise that you will struggle through life, pure and simple, and yet that you can and will overcome. Jacob lived and he struggled, and he got to the point in his life where he wanted to account for something, and so he sought blessing from God. My 30-odd years of Christianity have not been easy. They've been full of intellectual struggles. That's what happens when you study science and you try and reconcile that with the Bible. And I'm a bit of a screw-up. This is not confession time, but there's a lot of internal struggles I've gone through over the years and continue to do so. But the point is, just like in jiu-jitsu, tapping out is not giving up. Giving up's leaving your belt in the middle of the room and not coming back. And this man and I have seen many people do that more or less over the years. So the whole idea is just to keep coming back, keep wrestling with God again. So my prayer for Jake, his name in fact is that prayer, is that he will wrestle with things, be it his doubt, be it science, sex and relationships. And not to embarrass him, but I have seen him ask me questions. We have had conversations about issues that reassure me that he's processing things. My son's a deep thinker, doesn't give much away, but when we do chat, I know that he's struggling with things, he's thinking through things, and so he's wrestling with God, and I hope that he always does so. To be blessed by God, to seek to be blessed by God and never give up in that pursuit. Well, finally, how about all of us here? Note that the key in Jacob's wrestle with God is just before he re-enters his family, just before he re-enters his community. Now, I understand that church can be a right real pain in the backside, and we often give up grappling with other people, wrestling with the relationships with people we find difficult or awkward. Now, I've had a church basically go and tell me, you may as well go and take this person to court because we're not going to help you with the issue you're having with them. and I had to get apprehended violence order out on somebody because the church refused to get involved. I've had a minister behind my back tell me I was a lousy husband and that we should go and get marriage counselling by this fellow. I'm still married, for better or worse, and he's not. So someone was in their major act of projection. But what I'm saying to you is that if anyone's had reason to leave church, I've had several. And yet I've tried not to do it. The point I'm making is that jiu-jitsu is a miserable sport on your own. It's a great sport and community. And so this should be a haven for people who have stopped wrestling, stopped grappling with other people in other contexts, but can do so here. And it's a bit like the end of the movie Ants, where Z says, and I finally feel like I found my place. And you know what? It's right back where I started, but the difference is this time I chose it. So sometimes we'll go through cycles of things and where we just want to give up on other people. And what I'm encouraging to do from the story is to continue to wrestle with God with the eventual aim of returning back to wrestling with the whole idea of community. And I think, it's a lot easier here because we have other things to focus on, quite literally wrestling with each other. So Jacob wrestled with God and went home to be blessed precisely where he was meant to be, but this time he chose it. And so just as BJJ can't be done on your own, you can't do it on your own, so neither should wrestling with God be. But we need each other to struggle with our doubts. And it's been a while since I've spilled my guts, but there was a time when we used to meet out the back, a few of us, and it was real raw. It was, it was really in your face, the sorts of things that a few men of God shared with each other. And it was a great time of growth and blessing for us. And I hope and pray this group can continue to do that, because Grapplers for Christ is about loving, gathering and serving. And you can only really do two of those unless you do that as well, and that's gathered together. Thanks, guys.